Hello everyone. How are you doing? Um it has been a fucking week. And it's only Wednesday. Um and it's probably going to get worse. Uh Chat, can you hear me? I hope you can. I can hear myself on Twitch. That's good. Um I'll wait for YouTube to catch up. I'm sure you can. How's everyone doing? I hope you're all staying as sane as possible given the circumstances. Um I love tech. There's been no tech issues today. You can all hear me, I'm sure. Uh, my voice isn't pitched down for no reason. Um, the lights are working. The stream rate is working. There's no tech issues. 100% tech issue free stream. It's going to be amazing. Um, Great. You can all hear me. That's good news. Um, yeah. Keeping sane for some value of sane. Yeah, that's probably a good way of describing it. Um, in good spirits, considering. Yeah, I was thinking the same actually. I've been thinking a lot about how grim it is and how grim it's going to be. Both in the US and around the world, or in lots of places in the world, the places that are most influenced by the US over the next few years, and really thinking how important it is to stay sane, stay as happy as I can be, to survive it, to keep enough energy to be able to fight back the entire time, or as much of it as possible. And that's really left me focusing on how to do that. So I've really been valuing seeing my friends, my family, and focusing on the good things in life. Because if you're just constantly living in fear and you're constantly um, dreading the next thing, it will crush you and you won't be able to fight back. And I've been focusing on it so much that I have actually been in good spirits. That doesn't mean I'm happy, doesn't mean I'm ignoring the world. And in fact, like I was ignoring the world before, and I was happy in the moments I was able to forget it, but wasn't when I remembered it. But I've managed to get myself into a state now where everything is grim and horrible, but I have enough energy inside me to be happy when it's sunny or when my cat comes to cuddle me, and have enough energy to do something about it. Um, which is why we have this stream and these videos, but also various other things that I've been doing behind the scenes and less behind the scenes. And I hope that you, even if you're not there now, if you're in a position where you're watching this and you're like, I just feel completely overwhelmed and broken. Um, I want you to know that at least if you're in as privileged position as me, you can get to a mental state where you can not be overwhelmed and you can get up and do something about it. Um, if you're being directly affected by one of the horrific things that's happening, then that is a different story. Don't 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 feel guilty for not being in a position where you can do something, because then that's just another thing. Then you're feeling fear and despair and guilt. You need to be forgiving of yourself, but also to know that you can get there, and you just need to do your best to work on it and to ask for help from others to get to the point where you can. Thank you very much for the $2 super chat, Hontus. Thanks for all your hard work. Yeah, I never used to like things people saying thanks for your hard work, because I was like, am I really working hard? But actually, I know that I am now, having burnt out and hit the limit and the amount of hours that I put into things beyond my normal job. So I very much appreciate that comment. Thank you very much. Got to stay positive, but we can't downplay this shit, says Loki. Yes, that's exactly it. We shouldn't downplay it, but we also shouldn't upplay it. We shouldn't exaggerate it beyond what it is. We need to um, do our panics, do our little despairs, do our little depression, spirals, come back from that, and then have a completely cool, level-headed mind and go, what exactly is happening? Not what is the worst case, well, not what is all the panic stations, not what is this one person saying on Twitter, and also not just totally ignoring it. And then that is when you're in the place to do the most damage to the anti-trans bullshit. That is when you are most capable of being a thorn in their side, and we are most capable of organizing and changing something. So absolutely, totally agree with that. Yeah. Someone's saying, remember to be nice and joyous. Do be amazing. Yeah, remember to be nice and joyous to everyone here. To each other, to your friends and family. But you don't have to be nice to the worst people on earth. So sometimes it's fun to not be, because you need to vent out somewhere. And if they're being horrible to you, then being horrible back is sometimes warranted. But that has reminded me, seeing be in chat. One of the things I wanted to just start off by saying is a massive thank you to all of the mods who are on this stream and on this channel. We had a little discussion with the moderators about the moderation policies. There was a bit of a fiasco that you might have seen on Blue Sky last week. We had someone post a single comment in chat and it was fine, so we just left it there, and someone kind of flipped out over it. Anyway, we now have a slightly more concrete moderation policy, which totally allows people who we don't like to come here and say things, but not to be abusive and not to be wasting our time, not to be concern trolling, not to be losers. We're creating a community here, but we're also trying to change some people's minds. And that doesn't mean we're going to change the minds of diehard gender criticals, because they are completely beyond reason and incapable of changing their minds to evidence. But there are so many people out there who, 99% of people, have no idea at all, and they don't care. And maybe if they come here and they say something stupid in chat, and then rather than just instantly getting banned, they get corrected, and then they hang around in chat, maybe they'll learn something, maybe they'll become an ally. But super thanks to all the mods, because they're here of totally their own accord, and they are amazing that any of them show up at all. And I super appreciate them. Just all great people. So thanks for being here. £10 from Helen Lawson. Thank you very much. Positive story. My brother went to darts last night and his local got invaded by a dozen trans and gay people. Everyone just enjoyed themselves. End of story. Amazing. All those LGBTs with their superior prowess at darts, I'm sure they got, I don't even, 180. That's what you say in darts, isn't it? I'm sure they got 180 with every single throw or whatever. Hi, Katie. I love being a trans woman and won't ever let anyone take that away from me. It makes me happy to know all of the other girls feel the same. Keep slaying. Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm happy with who I am as a person, and no one's going to change that until I turn into dust or whatever in the furnaces. But yeah, until then, I'll be living my life. And the more happy and the more you enjoy your life and who you are, the more fuck you you're sending to all of the transphobes out there who are trying to ruin your life. Nothing pisses them off more than you living a happy and successful life. So Helen says, Katie keeps us in her basement and won't let us out. Yeah, all the mods are just they're just down here, just on the floor below, in the content mines, just moderating every single comment that comes through. But yeah, anyway, so we'll start talking about some of the things I want to talk about, because otherwise my voice will run out before the end. So obviously the last 7 days has been horrific on the international front, on a particularly American front. and we're going to cover some of it. And I'm not just going to only focus on that because it is quite negative. We're going to try and bookend the show with positive, good things. Just a little positive thing to start, something that's kind of like infuriating and funny. Then we'll deal with some bullshit. And then we'll look at some really good news. And then maybe if we've got time, I'll dunk on. I found a video earlier. I was just kind of looking for videos to see if there's anything I could react to. And one made me like laugh out loud with how dumb it was. So maybe we'll get time to look at that. But yeah, we'll get. Is there a bullpen in the Katie's dungeon? As in where you keep bulls, like that people get chased by, or do you mean bull pit, like little plastic balls? Maybe there could be both. Like, welcome to this horrific underground labyrinth basement that's full of small plastic balls and also angry cows, which are going to chase you around. But yeah, let's see. Oh, right. Just do a couple of super chats before we go on. $5 for Molly Pop. Hippo character runs at high speed, his legs forming a ball-like blur. I don't know what that means. Sorry. 149 for Mary Boss. A purple cat. Maybe that's replying to something I said earlier and I've forgotten what I said already. But let's get on to something. So the first thing, we're just going to do a little good news segment. Because this lady, Sophia Gascon, becomes the first openly trans actor nominated for an Oscar. It's good news that there are still these firsts happening. I know there are a lot of these or there has been a lot of these firsts. It's like, I don't really know what all of these different acting awards are, so I have thought we had already seen a first ever Oscar, but I guess it was a first ever Emmy or a first ever Brit Award or a first ever, like, I don't know what these things are, but my understanding is the Oscars are some of the bigger ones, and I'm sure it's some rich person, snobby, just big each other up your friends kind of ceremony for a lot of people, but the fact that, like, a trans person can break through and be nominated for one of these things is a big deal still, and especially when the government is attacking trans people, seeing some and all the like big capitalist companies have just given up pretending that they care about LGBT people at all. It's good to see that there is some mainstream things which are still acknowledging trans people as human, because this stuff does make more of a difference to the general public than you'd think. So yeah, she's been nominated for an Academy Award. I didn't even know that Academy Awards and Oscars were different or the same. Or I just don't care about this stuff normally. I only care because it's good that a trans person has finally got to the point where she's human enough that they might consider her for one of these. So that's great. She's recognised for a performance in the titular role of Jack's. Oh God, I can't read that. Musical crime film Emilia Perez. It's I don't know. I haven't seen it, but just congratulations to her. So that's a nice little opening segment. We're just desperate for some good news, all right? But there is some even better news coming up at the end. I've saved the best news for the end. But this next thing, this kind of is good news, but it's also it's like bad news, good news together. But it's funny because these people are absolutely awful and they've humiliated themselves. So Lauren Boebert, I don't even know how you say her name, forced to apologize after trying to kick out a guy from women's capital bathrooms. So basically what's happened here is the thing that we all said would happen and we all know was going to happen. One of these transphobic idiots whose entire personality is just being horrible, who happens to be in the US Congress, thought she saw a trans person or a trans woman in the women's bathrooms, ran out, made a huge scene about it, stormed in with a load of people, and then it wasn't a trans person. Because of course it fucking wasn't. Anyway, let's just read this before I say what I was going to say about that. It says here. Wait, that was the bit. So, Bloomberg Congress reporter Billy House witnessed the incident and described Boba as busting out of the women's bathroom, complaining to security personnel stationed in the nearby speaker's lobby of a guy inside. He said he was intrigued and saw 4 other people leave the bathroom, all women, he noted. Within minutes, however, she was back from the house floor into the restroom, followed by Nancy Mace, the other idiot whose entire personality is trying to be famous for hating trans people. But alas, just seconds after the duo entered the bathroom, they came back out and went quietly back to the floor. She admitted she made an error regarding a mistaken identity and apologized. A lesson, as if she's ever learned a lesson in her life. And it won't happen again. It probably will happen again. The thing is, this is the same with these, right-wing religious extremist Republican types, and it's the same with gender criticals, and it's the same with a random transphobic dickhead man at the local pub. When they become obsessed with trans people, which all of these groups are, gender critical people, Republicans, just obsessed beyond reason with trans people, when they get to that point in their life, it's all they think about, and they start looking for all these tells on people, and they start seeing like trans people where there aren't trans people. This is a real thing. You can see it happening. Often these people will have never mentioned trans people before in their life and have probably sat next to one on the bus, or talked to one, or encountered trans people rarely throughout their life. And as soon as they get obsessed with trans people, they start seeing them everywhere, and they start having all these ridiculous stories. And it's good that this was witnessed by multiple other people, and it was in, an American government building and stuff, that it gets reported as news, and she can't just say, I saw a scary trans person and I had to kick them out and just make up a complete lie, because multiple people saw the reality of it. But quite often, like, you'll see these gender critical people who will say things like they went out and they saw like 6 trans women in 1 week, and all of them were intimidating, and all of them were staring at them and being aggressive, and they're just either just entirely making it up, or they're so paranoid about trans people being everywhere, and they're so utterly obsessed with trans people they can't see anything else. So lol, get wrecked to the 2 dickheads involved, Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace, because you were wrong. And you can say lesson learned, but I mean, what's the lesson that you've learned here? You saw someone who you thought was a trans woman, and then it turned out that they were a cis woman. So the lesson you should have learned here is you actually can't tell just by looking whether someone is trans or cis. And so therefore, the entire reason we have women's spaces, which is to protect women from sexual harassment, etc., obviously applies to trans women too. But no, she hasn't learned that lesson. I think the lesson she has learned is to not do this big public display because it's embarrassing for her, and instead she should accuse random women of being trans when it's in a less public setting. So that was that's cringe. Yeah, it is a witch hunt. I just think it's utterly crazy. I don't know if you've had this so much in America. I guess in the most of the time I've heard the phrase witch hunt coming from the USA, it's been Trump saying it about himself, because completely ridiculous. But in the UK, J.K. Rowling and the gender criticals have tried to suggest that there is a witch hunt against gender critical people, and trying to frame themselves as innocent women being attacked for nothing, just like the witch hunts of whenever it was. Whilst literally doing the exact same fucking thing as the hysteria about witches hundreds of years ago about trans people, accusing random women of being evil in some way, so trying to take away everything about their life, trying to ruin their lives over it. Yeah, it's just really grim. I mean, this is literally what the phrase witch hunt means. Yeah, very grim. Someone saying here, as a butch cis woman, I am much more scared of meeting a TERF in a women's bathroom than a trans woman. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the gender critical person, the transphobe, the TERF, whatever you want to call them, might just accuse you of being a man. Maybe their angry husband is outside. Who knows what might happen there? Or maybe they'll attack you. Maybe they'll just shout at you and call you ugly and say horrible things about you, and that's enough to ruin your day. And what's the trans woman gonna do? Like 99.999% of the time, they're gonna do a wee and wash their hands just like everyone else. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone would rather be any sane, rational person would rather be in a room with a trans person than a gender critical. Even if your odds of being accused of being trans by the gender critical is only 1 in 100, that's still too many, and it's still going to be uncomfortable. Right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is infuriating, but I want to talk about the article and like how they're doing the propaganda behind this. So this is a story from the UK. It's a story from I think Fife in Scotland. Yeah, NHS Fife. So this is in Scotland, and this is from the Telegraph, but a few of the British right-wing newspapers have run with similar headlines. But this says, nurse can refer to transgender doctor as man in legal victory. Okay, so just the headline so far, because there's a few things we're going to point out that are just complete nonsense here. There isn't a legal victory here at all. Obviously, legal victory implies that there's some kind of decision by like a ruling or a jury or something, and you think, oh no, there's been some court case and this is ruled in favor of this horrible bigoted person who, you know, is abusing trans people that they work with or that they might have to care for. And no, that isn't what's happened. As explains later down, this gender critical loser demanded that she be able to harass the trans person in the courtroom, and the judge, who is pathetic, was just like, you know what? I can't stop you. So that's not like a legal victory. There wasn't some court case here. This hasn't resolved at all. This is just the like preliminary setup for this situation. And then it says, tribunal rules misgendering is not harassment after Sandy Peggy, the gender critical, claims she was forced to get changed in front of a trans woman. So two things here. Tribunal rules misgendering is not harassment. That isn't true. If you read what the judge says later on, even in their own article, so it says, I did read this earlier. Oh, I can't find it now. How cringe. Right. Okay. So the judge said, acknowledging that misgendering of Dr. Upton is likely to prove painful and distressing, but said he was not convinced by claims that in the context of an employment tribunal that it in itself would amount to unlawful harassment. However, he said the bar for harassment could be met if male pronouns were used gratuitously and offensively on a repeated basis. So when they say tribunal rules misgendering is not harassment, what they mean is the judge has said if you were to just misgender someone in the context of a tribunal a couple of times, that's not illegal, so I can't stop you. But it could become illegal harassment if you just would keep doing it on purpose in order to harass someone. I mean, that's the same as just the law that already exists. Someone misgenders you once, they haven't broken the law. If someone constantly does it over and over again to harass you, they've broken a harassment law because it's harassment. So it's exactly the same here. So this part of the sentence is complete bullshit. And then the next part, Sandy Peggy claims she was forced to get changed in front of a trans woman. I don't know if she has actually claimed that or the Daniel Sanderson, who's clearly a terrible journalist, is making the claim that she has claimed that. Either way, there is absolutely no way in hell that she was forced to get changed in front of a trans woman. Like, under what pressure? There was someone holding a gun there saying you must get change in front of this trans woman. You could have waited. You could have got change in a cubicle. If you've got a problem, like if you're irrationally bigoted against French people and then there's a French person in the changing room, you're not being forced to get change in front of French people. You're choosing to get change at the same time as a French person and you're getting offended by it. Just like they're just trying to live their life. They're just trying to get on with it. They're just getting changed like you are. And if you have a problem, that is your problem. And you can just wait. How long does it take to get changed in a changing room? 2 minutes? You can wait 2 minutes, face the other way, go to the toilet, get a drink of water, maybe grow up for 2 minutes and become a better person and then not be offended by it. She was not forced to get changed in front of anyone. That's just false. That's a lie. Yeah, so like this is constantly what newspapers like the Telegraph and the Times and the Daily Mail do all the time, and it can be very easy to see this stuff and be like, oh god, they've changed the law again, we've lost ground again, trans people's protections have been weakened again. It hasn't at all. That this case has not happened yet. There has been no official ruling, nothing that's going to cause a precedent, and if anything, the judge has just confirmed what harassment is, which was already the law. That doesn't mean this case will go well. It could easily go badly, but it could not. And it is grim that this person is allowed to be so abusive and disrespectful to someone who's literally just trying to live their life. Like, this is a doctor who's just trying to do their job, has caused no issues at all, is just existing. This bigoted person has decided that a trans person existing too near them is so offensive that they have to harass them. And now they're trying to, like, you know, take it to court. If you are, like, this person is a nurse, do you think that any trans patients are going to be safe around someone who is so disgusted by trans people that they have, like, gone to court over it? No. If you are offended by gay people or trans people or black people or anyone else, don't be a nurse. Don't be a doctor. Don't work in a shop. Don't be a politician. Don't be a lawyer. Don't be anyone who interacts with other humans. You know, go and be a lumberjack in Norway or something. Be like Indiana Jones cave explorer. Be, you know, someone who works the midnight shift at some place where you don't encounter other humans, because then you won't have to be offended by LGBT people being near you. You can't do your job properly, certainly if you're in healthcare, if you don't see all the other people in the world as equals. So get fucked. But yeah, don't fall for the propaganda. I think it's really important to point this out. The right-wing media is they need to constantly do this because you know, part of the money they get from clicks and from advertising, part of the political power they get from riling up right-wing people against immigrants and LGBT people, etc., is sustained by this, like, cult mentality that they create. The gender critical in the UK cult and, like, the MAGA cult in the US. They need constant reinforcement of their beliefs. That's how these kind of things work. You see it in all kinds of cults. People who are in cults and then go on, like, missionary expeditions, or just for whatever reason, maybe they're injured or they're ill or they're taken out of the cult for a long time, they stop caring about it, and that's the time when they're able to de-radicalize. But if they then go back into the cult, then the constant reinforcement gets them, and it's very hard to pull them out of it. But also they need this sense of constant momentum. They need it, so every single day when you log on to ihatetranspeople.com or wherever gender critical people hang out, they need a new story that says, we're winning, we win again. Alison Bailey has won her 4th court case in a row and she's appealing it again. You know, they need this constant victory, and it serves two purposes, because it demoralizes us. And if you go onto Blue Sky or Reddit or whatever and you see you know, oh, another thing. Oh, it's just so demoralizing. It stops you wanting to fight back. It makes you feel like you've already lost, and we haven't lost. This this isn't over at all. This is just another bullshit propaganda article. Thousands of families to sue the NHS over puberty blockers. Turns out zero did. It's the same. They will make a mountain out of molehill 1,000 times. One time out of 1,000, something will happen, and then we'll have to do something about it. Anyway. Biggest see the headlines, misrepresents the facts, then act on it, and it doesn't go well for them, is par for the course now. Yeah, I mean, you do sometimes see that, where the like rank and file cultists believe the headlines and think that now they're like immune from legal repercussions or who knows what, capable of flying. They believe so much rubbish. Who knows? But yeah, you certainly see that kind of things. Someone here saying, it annoys me that one of my big trans awareness events years back was at an NHS England headquarters in London, and clearly they learned nothing. I mean, as an organisation, the NHS is pretty garbage for trans people. But NHS Fife here, I think, did the right thing in that when, I mean, we could look more at the article, but it sounds like there was an incident between the trans doctor who was trying to mind their own business and the gender critical nurse who was explicitly going out of the way to not mind their own business. And NHS 5 basically said, well, go away then. And then she's trying to sue them. So there are good people in the NHS. There are a lot of good doctors and good nurses. It's just that the NHS hasn't done enough to get rid of all the people who are rationally prejudiced against not just trans people, but all kinds of minorities. You know, if you're someone who is morally opposed or immorally opposed to abortion, don't be a doctor. Get fucked. Get a different job. Don't be in a position where someone might be relying on you to give them an abortion. Gosh, very kind super chat there of $50. That is super kind. So let's move on to the next thing. So, sorry, just having a alt tab fiasco there. We're going to talk about the Cass review again. How exciting. The Cass scandal continues to... What the hell is this advert? Okay. No alcohol challenge according to the age, 25 to 33. However, that doesn't apply to me, so I can get drunk all I want. Very interesting advert. This is on my account, on my like blank Google Chrome account, which doesn't like deletes all the cookies and doesn't remember anything. So this must be like the default advert. So funny. Looks just like me, obviously. Anyway, let's start this segment again. I kind of want to crop it off because it's so weird. Okay. No, okay, we're just gonna have to deal. We're just gonna have to deal with it. So, the next thing we're going to talk about is the Cass scandal, the Cass review, which continues to just like fall apart, which it will do for probably years to come. So some experts in the US, by the way, Dr. Cass here is not an expert in trans healthcare, so should have never been put to this task at all in the first place. But some actual experts in trans healthcare claim the Cass review transgresses medical law and policy. Says they said it would have violated federal law because the authors failed to adhere to legal requirements protecting the integrity of the scientific process. So this is absolutely shredding the Cass review. There's a bunch of things here that they've said. Like, this is really damning. They've said it was not... So the Cass review was not verified by experts. The review thus departed from standard practice. Indeed, as mentioned above, if the US government issued a report in a similar manner, it would be violating federal law. It deviates from pharmaceutical regulatory standards in the United Kingdom and calls for evidentiary standards. God, what is this rubbish advert? And calls for evidentiary standards for gender affirming care that is not applied elsewhere in pediatric medicine. Go away. Man, what is wrong with these adverts? Okay. Okay, maybe they've gone now. No. Man, this is unbearable. The National.Scot. I thought I had ad block here. Right, yeah, okay, I did. It's gone away. That's why I'm so surprised by adverts. I usually have an ad blocker. Don't know what's happening. Anyway, we'll carry on. I let that bit out. It's fine. They also said it contravenes international standards by failing to list its authors. We do know that CAS chaired the review, but observers must speculate about who else participated in the manuscript's drafting and whether they held bias against LGBT people. Well, we know some of it's leaked, that they talked with SEGM, which is some anti-trans hate group, for example. They say it had a high risk of bias according to the risk of bias assessment tool for systematic reviews and substandard level of scientific rigor. It impromptu excluded non-English articles, grey literature, non-peer-reviewed articles and documents, and other articles not identified by its simplistic search strategy, like absolutely shredding this thing. The review's departure from the evidentiary and procedural standards of medical law policy and practice can be understood best in the context of the history of leveraging medicine to police gender norms. Absolutely amazing. A proper good dunk. But that wasn't the only one that happened this week. The Welsh government also have said that the puberty blockers ban in Wales is unlawful because of Welsh law. So there's a politician here who says, oh my God. Mate, my ad blocker must have crashed. What is all that rubbish? Oh dear. One of the politicians says, I think it's clear that the government have acted unlawfully. They need to set out with some urgency how they intend to rectify this mistake and, most importantly, engage meaningfully with this group of children and young people whose rights deserve to be respected and voices should be heard. So there are multiple pushbacks amongst experts in governments, pointing out how terrible this is. That doesn't mean it's on the verge of falling away, because it still has the full weight of the UK's Labour Party behind it and the international anti-trans hate movement. But every single time a new thing comes out, shredding it, it loses credibility. And the thing is, there is so many things, it's hard to keep up. So I just want to strongly recommend this. So this is Dr. Ruth Pierce as her website, so ruthpierce.net. I will put this link in the description. She has been maintaining a roundup of all the commentary and evidence and all the reviews and everything which have come out criticizing, shredding, tearing apart the CAS review. And there are a lot. Let's just have a quick scroll to see. So there's different sections. Responses from healthcare professionals. You just keep scrolling. There are so many. Responses from publications from experts and researchers. Like, there are just so many of these. It's just so damning. It is such a scandal. Legal decisions oppose it. Responses from the trans community and organizations. Responses from trade unionists and human rights groups. From journalists. Like, how many of these are there? Just so many things. And then even finishes up with Dr. Cass responding to her own stupid review, saying that it doesn't conclude that puberty blockers are unsafe. And every single article in the mainstream press you will read will say that. The BBC article on this event of the Welsh government saying that banning puberty blockers was illegal under Welsh law just says, after a review found they were unsafe and an expert group said they were unsafe, which is, they didn't say which expert group. It's obviously just one of the anti-trans hate groups who are not experts. But like some of this stuff is just so damning. Um, there was one. I mean, I was just scrolling down trying to read some of these. Like some of these things, some of these journalist things, like um, a booklet produced on research cited in the CAS review was funded by SEGM, an anti-trans lobby group. Like, there's just so many things in here that people have found out that just pull holes in this, like, absolutely disastrous, um, like scandal. Like the whole thing is such a scandal. So yeah, the CAS review continues to fall apart, and it will do for a while. So what can you do? Well, Ruth Pierce, who I think is great, and you should follow on whatever in whatever way you can. Sign up to her newsletter or whatever. Follow her on Blue Sky. Um, you should write a letter to your MP or political representative, or to the NHS, or to any professional bodies that are related to trans healthcare, or maybe that you work with. If you work in the NHS, write a complaint. Pick something on here and write about it and complain to them, and just do not stop. You need to make it clear that there isn't just one objection. It's not like, oh, Dr. Cass forgot to put a full stop at the end of the sentence, and so therefore we should check the whole thing out. It is, this thing is a total fucking sham. It's absolute disaster, and there are hundreds of reasons why it should be thrown out, at the very least thrown out. And the way to do that is to just keep being annoying. Just keep sending letters. This is what the gender criticals do. Like, they generally have a lot more time and money than we do, and they can just sit down every evening and write an angry letter to someone, and it does make a difference. So after this video, it's so easy to write to your MP. You can look up and find out where they are just by Googling it. You can find their email address, and then you can be like, you can go to ruthpierce.net, and you can pick one of these things. Like, just scroll down and be like, right, okay, we're going to inform our MP about Dr. Cal Horton, who, has said the following things, or we're going to pick one of these. The Japanese Society of Psychiatry and Neurology has criticized it in the following way. The CAS review is a disaster. I want you to respond to this, please. And when you get a generic email back, just go, whoop, whoop, let's pick a new thing. CAS review excluded 98% of gender-affirming hormone studies to reach its conclusion. Did you know that? That's absolutely horrific. Like, it's just insane. And then send them that email. And just keep doing it. Keep being annoying. And some of your politicians will just ignore it. But some of them will be like, God, this person is annoying. I better meet them just to shut up. And then you can go through this list with them and be like, look, this thing's a fucking disaster. It's an embarrassment to your government. Or if they're not a Labour politician, you can be like, you can shred this government on the fact that it's done all this anti-science rubbish. And it makes a difference. But it's not just MPs. There are other things you can do, like just making other people aware of this. Because, like, if people have only engaged with the CAS scandal on news, like mainstream news, BBC News level, they'll be like, oh yeah, well, trans people don't like it, but like it's an independent government review, and be like, no. This thing is an absolute disaster. You need to see this. Please, can you just have a look at some of these things and understand how terrible this is? Because you've only got to show one person who meets with someone who then criticizes it in their like local council or something, and then suddenly we start building momentum on this. And obviously, once you know about this stuff, protests and demonstrations are an option too. But yeah, I think we just got to keep pushing against this CAS review. It's going to be used internationally to justify harming trans people, and yeah, it's grim. So, something frozen. Did someone say? Oh no, what's going on here? Oh no, what's going on? Oh, we having now tech issues after I said we wouldn't have tech issues. Has anything jumped? Guys, what's going on? Where's all the chat? I can't see any chat. Please don't say it's cut out. Okay. I just clicked on my thing and it looked like... Okay, good. Oh, okay, because I clicked on the the YouTube dashboard thing and there was like nothing there and I had a little panic. I was like, no, I've just done a whole flipping segment and no one's even watched it. Okay, it's all fine on Twitch. It's all good. I did realize that I forgot to record the first half of this, but it's all right. I've just pressed record now and we're recording the second half. It's fine. It's all good. So the next, actually, let's just see. Everyone's just talking about this. I think YouTube has a memory leak or Chrome. I don't know. I don't know that YouTube does. My computer's not lagging or anything. Yeah, I think we're okay. We're okay. It's all good. It's all good. Good to know that Twitch is still working too. So just right. So just on the tech issues, just so you know, I do the same thing every single time. I did forget to press start recording here, and that is definitely something I should put on a checklist. But like when my computer randomly pitches down my voice, or when it changed the default to 10,000 kilobits a second streaming rate, or when it just decided that it wasn't going to stream picture to Twitch, or all these other things, or when the flipping advert with the lion on appeared, like none of this is my fault at all. It's just, oh, so frustrating. Anyway, right. We're going to talk about the next topic. So, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a cascade of things. I'm going to try and cover it all in one go. We'll see how it goes. So, let me just think. Well, maybe I want to split this up. Perhaps I do want to split this up. Yeah, I'm going to split this up. Right. So, first of all, we're going to talk about Sarah McBride and the idea of transphobic politics being a distraction. So, first, who is Sarah McBride? So she is a representative in one of the houses or Congress or something in the USA, and she's a trans woman. She's the highest level of power trans person in the USA, and I think she is a good person. She is a Democrat, which means, well, that comes with a lot of baggage being a Democrat, but I think she is very strong as a person to become a politician and to climb up the ladder and stuff. But obviously not everything that she's ever done is something that I would personally endorse. Earlier this year, she was made like a target of Nancy Mace, who was trying to ban her from the bathrooms in the US Capitol. And she just said, okay, whatever, I'm just going to carry on doing my job. And I think a lot of cis liberals liked that because they felt like, oh, all this transphobia stuff is just a distraction, and she's showing them because they're just looking stupid, screaming about trans rights, and she's just getting on with her job. I think a lot of trans people were demoralized by it. I personally was. It felt like being punched in the stomach a bit. I felt that Sarah McBride was a bit of a hero, in that she's a trans person out there living her life and also being a politician and also being pretty good at it to get elected and multiple times and to like rise up the ranks and stuff. And it seems she's quite liked by her districts and things. and also to like be respected and to just be that strong, to not crumble under the pressure from the the Republican media and the right wing press and stuff. And then when she just kind of gave up straight away and accepted her status as like a second class citizen, um, it was quite upsetting for me, like personally. Um, I've got to the point where I'm not as upset by it anymore. But I saw a lot of reactions. Some people were saying, "Well, what do you expect her to do? Like, what else can she possibly do? She's basically on her own. The Democrats aren't going to back her up, and the best thing she can do is just be an example and show the country and the world that trans people can do the job fine." And that was like one end of the spectrum, and then the other end of the spectrum was she's a traitor, she's betrayed us, like fuck Sarah McBride, she's dead to me. And I kind of felt all of the reactions at once. Maybe not as extreme as saying she's dead to me or anything, but I totally understand that it's an incredibly difficult situation, but also that it was quite upsetting for me. But I think where I've got to on this now is, or on that particular issue, is now that like everyone, all of us have to do what we are good at and do our best, what we think is the best thing. And it is so hard to know what the best thing is. I don't know what the optimum course of action leading to trans people's liberation in the future for me would be. Maybe doing YouTube. Maybe it's not. Maybe I could be doing something better with my time. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe some of the things I say are net negative to trans people. It's so hard to know. All I can do is constantly evaluate where I'm at, listen to the trans community around me, and make my own decisions, and just have faith that some of the other people, lots of the other people around me, are trying to do the same thing. I think there are a lot of high-profile trans activists who I'm not 100% aligned on. Sometimes they say stuff that I don't agree with. Sometimes some of them I don't like as people. Some of them probably don't like me as a person. But what's important is, I think that they are good enough people, generally on the right page, pushing for roughly the same thing I am, and we just need allies. I don't think like looking at the people involved in this, Nancy Mace is evil. The whole like Donald Trump is evil. The things they're doing are horrific. And for me to spend any of my anger on Sarah McBride when she is quite clearly trying to do what she thinks is right for trans people, like she's not being like a Blair White or a Debbie Hayton just trying to get a platform and selling other trans people out. She is clearly made a decision based on what she thinks is best. If you don't think it's best, that is fine. I don't know if I think it's best. I'm not convinced it was the right decision. And if you want to criticize her, criticize her. But I don't think that someone like this we should be attacking. I think we're under a lot of pressure, and under a lot of pressure we're more likely to attack each other. And the more we attack each other, the less community we have, the less organized we are, and the easier it'll be to steamroll us. And that's exactly what the transphobes want. And I mean, I saw a similar thing this week with high-profile trans activists making a mistake and loads of people shredding her for it. Looking at her output, like 99% great, pro-trans rights, like putting herself on the line. Lots of being a public figure is horrific. Withstanding loads of stuff that you don't know about, and then making a mistake and criticize her. That's fine. Disagree with the decisions. That's fine. But attacking people, this isn't like you can't, it's cancel culture. Like I said to someone, like, I think you're being too harsh about this. And they're like, oh, you're doing the right-wing cancel culture dance. Like, what are you talking about? It's just embarrassing. Like, there is a big difference between I'm being cancelled. All I did was sexually assault someone. Oh, please donate to my podcast and buy my Bitcoin or whatever. And saying, look, this person is 99% on the same course that you are, and they're actually using a lot of their personal time and energy and reputation and future and everything fighting for everyone here, and they've done something either differently to what you would have done, or they've made a bad decision, they've made a mistake, whatever, but they're not like evil. And the other people in the picture here are like cartoon evil. And where are you spending your energy? It should even be in constructive, positive criticism. Or if you're in a rage and you need to take it out on someone, don't fucking take it out on, trans activist who made a mistake today, trans activist of the week who were all bullying. Go and tell some transphobic dickhead to fuck off. So that's my little rant on that. But that leads into the second thing that I wanted to say about this, and I just want to watch this clip with everyone, just so we know, as like a setting for this, and we'll read this tweet as well. So let's watch this from Sarah McBride.
People. I think we also have to be clear, though, that these attacks are politically motivated. These attacks are part of a strategy of misdirection and distraction by the Republican Party, because every single time you see them go after trans people, yes, we have to acknowledge the harm that they have on the community impacted, but we also have to recognize what they are doing with their right hand, because I can guarantee you that when they're going after trans people with their right hand, they're picking the pocket of American workers, they're fleecing seniors, they're undermining unions, and this is all part of that politics of misdirection and distraction and division for people.
So this person says, it's just quoted what she just said here, basically. When they're going after trans people with the right hand, they're picking the pocket of American workers, they're fleecing seniors, they're undermining unions, and this is part of that politics of misdirection, distraction, and division. There's a meme for the last several years of saying, they're just trying to distract you with all this trans stuff. It doesn't really matter. And this is something that I've kind of said in hope that like cis liberals who aren't really paying attention, or cis centrists, will understand that trans rights don't affect them at all, and that all of this energy being spent on trans rights is it's distracting from the fact that they're ruining the economy or whatever. But I think this is a wrong message. I've kind of changed my position on this recently. It is a distraction from issues. If you're a random cis person who isn't strongly politically aligned, the fact that the news and the politicians talk about trans people all the time is a distraction from things that affect you. You are not affected by trans rights. If you're a cis person and you're not related to a trans person, or like married to one or whatever, and they're not, one's not your friend, trans rights do not affect you at all in any way. But suggesting that this is some kind, like, I think sometimes people view right-wing politics as like a group of billionaires are like, how can we get richer? Well, we'll remove support from the poor and we'll do tax cuts. Oh, but they might notice. How do we distract them? Let's just pick some minority and just like demonize them, and then hopefully everyone will be focused on that instead. And that is maybe how some people do act, and maybe how you can view the world to an extent. But I think certainly from the Republicans or the gender criticals or the conservatives or Reform Party or any other right-wing large political group, it isn't a distraction in that sense. Transphobia is a core part of their ideology. Like, enforcing patriarchy is like the core value of republicanism. Like, along with making rich people richer and poor people poorer, that's one of the things. And another thing is creating some white Christian fascist ethno-nationalist religious authoritarian hellhole. But the other, like, third arm of it, the core value is like giving power to them financially and through like race and religion. Another one is sexism, patriarchy. That is an absolute core value of theirs. There is no world, there's no alternate universe where these billionaires trying to get power will like, oh, let's pick on a different minority. We'll just pick on whatever, polyamorous people, and that they were just fine with trans people. That was never going to happen. They are ideologically opposed to trans people because trans people just existing is an affront to patriarchy. We show that this false hierarchy between men and women isn't binary, isn't static, isn't valid at all. The fact that we move between these groups and that we choose to move between these groups undermines core values and beliefs they have about how the world should work, and that makes them distressed and offends them. And that's why they want to eradicate trans people. It's why they want to get rid of gay people, and it's why they want to remove abortion. Removing abortion isn't just like, oh yeah, they want to distract women so that they're all busy doing something else. They want to control women because that's a core part of their belief system. They want to ban gay marriage because, like, women being property of men, and that is how the world works, is a core value of their whole ideology. And as soon as you have two men marrying, which one of them's the woman? It doesn't make sense to me. Which one of them's the slave who has to do all the housework? Like, no, this can't be. Men are always superior to women. And it's the same with trans people. So I'm going to stop saying things like transphobia is a distraction from the real issues, because transphobia is one of their real issues. They care as much about trans rights as we do. And like, it's genuinely a core value of theirs, is they hate trans people and they need to eradicate us. Saying that they are making attacks on trans people so that you don't realize that they are enriching themselves and destroying the country or whatever, that's valid. But that is subtly different to suggesting that they're only picking on trans people just to distract people and they don't really care. Donald Trump himself, he probably doesn't care about trans people either way. But the people running the show of all this ideological warfare bullshit, like the core Republican base and the people in charge, they absolutely do. They strongly believe this stuff. It's not just a distraction. So that's we're starting to enter the grimmest part of the show. 1 hour in. Just a reminder, there's gonna be some good stuff at the end. Two things can be true at the same time, someone says. By the way, when I'm saying someone, sometimes the colors isn't good enough contrast and I literally just can't read your name. So I'm sorry. Someone here saying two things can be true at the same time. Yeah, it is both like ideologically core to their belief system and something they're doing to like hope you don't notice. Or at least some of them. But I hope you don't notice that they're making rich people richer. But I think that it's more that there are multiple people involved in this, and immoral billionaires who just want all the power in the world work well together with immoral like Christian fascist types, because the Christian fascist types want some charismatic, powerful person with no morals that they can steer and like throw praise at, so that they have this like relationship where they get what they want. And the billionaires just want some group of people who are gonna not criticize them and who will support them doing whatever they want to do. So that they're like natural allies. But the ideological Christian fascist types, or any, pretty much, any religious fascist or just fascism in general, fascism in general has patriarchy as a core value. You're never going to see a situation where the fascists have any kind of power and they aren't pushing heavily for patriarchy to be strengthened. And that's always going to include controlling women's bodies, reducing women's social mobility, enforcing straight relationships and enforcing gender roles, trying to force intersex people into a binary that doesn't exist, trying to stop trans people transitioning. They are all interlinked and they are a core value. So both are true of the Republican Party at the same time. But like, certainly Mark Zuckerberg, Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, they don't care about trans people at all. They just want to be richer. Elon Musk totally lost his mind. Who knows what he believes? I don't even think he knows what he believes. But the majority of them are just immoral, don't care about anything, just want to be more powerful. And then the culture warrior wackos They truly care about this. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Donald Trump has done a bunch of executive orders. I think as we talk, there might be a new one out. Probably by the time you watch this video, if you're watching it back, there's even more. They've done a bunch of executive orders trying to make trans people's lives worse, trying to eradicate trans people from public life entirely. Like true genocidal intent here. They just want the group of trans people that exist in the USA to not exist in the USA. And this is what we've been saying that the anti-trans movement has been moving towards for decades, for years, this whole time. And the gender criticals in the UK have been denying it this whole time, but now it's happening, and they're all supporting it, of course. But like they've written this document, and basically what they've tried to do is say they've just tried to legally enforce the gender critical position. So this is done. I mean, American politics is very different to lots of other countries, very different to the UK. In the UK, if you get a new prime minister, they couldn't just come in and change the law just by writing a document. That isn't how it works. But also I know that when presidents in the US do that, there can be legal challenges. It's up to like judges and all kinds of things. You get all this mess where it bounces back and forth for a little bit. So although they've done this won't necessarily hold up, though I wouldn't have much faith in the US court system, especially when, the Supreme Court is just a bunch of right-wing activists. We'll see. But one thing that we know can't hold up is this is just scientifically illiterate garbage. I think it's just worth pointing that out. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I don't think we're going to fit in today, is pressuring gender criticals. When they say sex is binary and immutable, and you say, cool, give me a binary and immutable definition of sex then. And they won't. They can't. Some of the new people say, like, oh, chromosomes or gametes or something. And then you point out a counterexample, and then the whole thing crumbles. So most of them don't. Most of them have seen this. If you ask them for an actual binary and immutable definition of sex, they won't give it because it's embarrassing, because they always just get called out. So they just constantly insist there is one, but they'll never give it. And if you push and push and push, they might concede that there is no. They'll be like, oh, well, okay, there's some exceptions. We might get into that later. But the government obviously has to actually write one down. So they've attempted to do that here. They've said, A, sex shall refer to an individual's immutable biological classification as either male or female. So they're just straight up saying it is binary and you are one of the two. And sex is not a synonym for and does not include the concept of gender identity. Okay, so they've just declared that it is immutable, and they've said that it is binary. So the standard gender critical blind claim, sex is immutable and binary. Okay, let's find out then what this actual definition is. Women are women and girls are girls should be an adult, juvenile, human, females respectively. Same for man and boy. Then they say, here we go, we're actually getting a real definition here. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. And male means person belonging at conception to the sex that produces a small reproductive cell. So two obvious things jump out right away at this. The first thing is, what happens if you don't have any reproductive cells? Plenty of people are born without either. Or, in a very rare cases, some people are born with both. So these two lines scientifically, factually, observably conflict with this. This claim here, A, and D and E can't all be true. They're just observably incorrect. You could say, if you ignored A, you could say D, you could assert D, and you could assert E, and then you could say, oh, there is at least one other group which doesn't fit into this. Like, you could say, there are female people, there are male people, there are people who are female and male, and there are people who are neither. That is a claim you could make. If they made other points and they got rid of A, then at least it wouldn't be logically inconsistent with what is just trivially observable in humans and like every other animal there is, um, or every other animal that has more than one sex and etc etc. You know what I mean? Um, it is just a simple fact of reality that D&E do not create a system which is binary and splits all humans into one of two boxes. It just does not do that. That's just an observable fact. And that is like the classic gender critical stumbling point. They always pick genitals, chromosomes, or gametes, or gamete potential, which we will come on to later. And whichever one of those they pick, you're going to be like, what about the people who have both? What about the people who have neither? What about the people it's ambiguous and you can't tell? It applies to all of it. This just does not hold up. The other very important thing to point out, other than the fact this is scientifically illiterate garbage, and this is the kind of thing where, oh, okay, maybe someone sues and then it goes to the court and then the next highest court and then the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court's like, no, we're holding this up because we're a bunch of fascists. Well, this is just in conflict with like measurable, observable reality. There are going to be people born who do not fit into this at all, and you're either going to have to just force them into a box or eradicate them or pretend they don't exist or something. But it's just going to be constant conflict with reality, this ruling. The other thing that really stands out is this at conception. So firstly, your sex isn't like obviously the people writing this believe that you have a soul and your soul appears at conception, and conception is just when like sperm and egg meet. As soon as they touch, pow, you have a soul, and now you also have a sex, and that's it. Done. That's how it works. Of course, biologically, that isn't how it works. Your sex isn't fully determined at the point of conception because there's a whole bunch of processes involved in sex development for all of the different sex characteristics you have, and all that's happening at the moment of the cells touching and meeting and exchanging their DNA is just some DNA exchange, and that isn't setting up for an inevitable hormone levels, which are a key part of sex development, or other things that could happen, like very rare mutations through like cell replication and stuff, which does happen, and also rarely in the cases where two fertilized zygotes fuse into one person, or in animals as well. There's examples of that happening. So it is also factually false to say at conception. But what is really important is that they are trying to do this at conception thing. This, you have a soul at conception, you have a sex at conception, this, you are a person at conception, because this is like screaming to me of like anti-abortionist rhetoric, propaganda. Like, if you were really pro-abortion and really anti-trans rights, which some people claim they are, some gender criticals claim to be feminists and also anti-trans, you would be red flagging at this language, because you're saying that there's this, properties of humans becoming a thing at conception, at the moments of cells touching, not through some developmental process like every single aspect of your body and your personhood, over a series of 9 months, but no, in one instant, in shorter than a nanosecond, literally, pow, you now are a person and you have sex. That's you have a sex. You not that you have sex. Yeah, this is clearly anti-abortionist rhetoric, and that would stand out to anyone, any feminist. I think most of the people watching this will be like, wow, yeah, that isn't how the science works, and also this looks like an anti-abortionist wrote it. So you know what that means, don't you? That means that the UK's gender critical movement fucking love it. So here we have Mayor Forstater, CEO of anti-trans activist group Sex Matters. I'm really never sure what I can safely legally describe them as, because I live in the UK and they're a UK group and they have loads of money and they do not respond well to criticism, and we don't have freedom of speech. But yeah, they spend every single penny of the money they earn either on paying their staff or on trying to ruin trans people's lives. This is the Mayor Forstater who J.K. Rowling came out as transphobic to support, who claimed in her tribunal that she simply believed that sex is binary and immutable, and that's it. But obviously, here she is campaigning to remove trans people's rights based on that, which is the issue. But she says, Sex Matters welcomes the US President Trump's executive order reaffirming the legal status. They always have to say, like, gender critical people always have to say things like reaffirming, restoring, like, even though this is a change away from the normal, away from reality, away from what has been the norm for, decades. In fact, this is new. This hasn't been, like, in the UK, hasn't been the case for a long time, but in the USA, I don't know, has it ever been the case? Reaffirming the legal status of the two sexes, male and female, across America's federal government. This is a bold and necessary step in the fight back against trans activism. Trans activism, of course, being one word here because it's not really activism, according to them. An ideology which prioritizes identity claims over materiality. This is the people who are saying that, oh yeah, all the exceptions, all the people who don't fit into our definition simply don't count. And also, even though earlier we were all complaining about how trans women pass and our representatives and stuff are mistaking cis women for trans women, we were also claiming that trans women are immune to sexism somehow, and that's why we need to take away their rights, like protections from sexism. Like, truly delusional language here. And seeks to prevent the use of ordinary language to express ordinary facts. That's just common sense, isn't it? It's just common sense. It's like, oh yeah, okay, well, we have a person here who doesn't produce any gametes. That's not ordinary language. That's not ordinary facts. Get out of here. Just complete garbage. It's just such a joke that this group is taken seriously at all. Fully defeating gender identity ideology will take time and hard work. Yeah, it will take opening concentration camps and stuff, but I'm sure they're all committed to that. But this executive order is a game changer in the fight to protect women's rights. Protect women's rights. Extra space here. Protect women's rights. Like, this is Donald Trump, like the guy who set up the stage for removing abortion. And let's just finish this quickly, but just remember this point, and defend children from the harms of gender medicine both in America and elsewhere. So, top comment, supporting a rapist and a racist as long as he hates trans, eh? Definitely going to help women and girls. But also, the same order, Trump's new gender rules, gut a key part of the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Of course they fucking do. Like, this is always going to happen. There is absolutely no way in hell that Donald Trump gives a fucking shit about women or children in any sense. And Mayor Forstater knows that. She's just lying. They all know that gender critical does not give a fuck about women. Like, not even slightly. They're just blindly supporting this at conception bullshit. This ridiculous thing which will class a bunch of intersex women and like other vulnerable groups of women just not as women anymore. And will just remove their rights, which, by the way, doesn't affect anyone else at all. They're just blindly supporting this dickhead, this, like, internationally renowned, like, sexual assault, adulterer, loser, misogynist. Like, how can anyone take these people seriously? This is what gender critical is. Like, this is what we were talking about last week with that one gender critical person who's been like, well, all the trans people were saying that gender criticals just support misogynists, and now I look around and they all seem to be doing it. It's like, yeah, this has always been what it fucking is. This whole protecting women's rights and defending children bullshit is the same recycled rubbish that it always is with every single minority rights, anti-minority rights, anti-civil rights bullshit. This is exactly what they were saying. You've got to protect the women and children from black people when they were trying to get civil rights. It's what they were saying about gay people when they were trying to get gay marriage. Yeah, it's just completely ridiculous. Like, people... Two things should happen when someone is gender critical. One, you should absolutely not respect them in a democratic society bullshit, because they are full-on trans rights eliminationists. They want to completely remove rights we have today, all of the rights we have today as trans people in the UK, the US, and around the world. And that will have real material reality effects on our lives, and it will not affect these losers at all. That is the first thing that should always be acknowledged by everyone. And the second is, they should be laughed out of the room trying to pretend that they care about material reality or protecting women when they are supporting something which is observably false, like scientifically garbage, and then secondly supporting like this rapist, misogynist, fascist leader. Like, the gender criticals are always just gonna support fascists. And that leads us on, we're just doing a little cascade here. That leads us on to the next thing. So I don't know if you remember, a while ago, I think a few years ago, 2021, The Guardian UK published an interview with feminist Judith Butler. And Judith Butler said some stuff about the gender criticals, and The Guardian instantly pulled that section of the interview. They edited it. They pretend they never released the interview at all. They had no editor's note, no explanation, nothing. They didn't respond to criticism on it. So in the deleted section of the interview, Butler made the point that anti-trans feminists are allying with the right wing over the dislike of gender and transness despite their seeming political differences. Sometimes, members of the anti-gender ideology movement claim that sex alone has scientific standing, but other times they appeal for divine mandates for masculine domination and difference. They don't seem to mind contradicting themselves, said Butler. The trans exclusionary radical feminists, the TERFs, the gender critical movement, and the so-called gender critical writers have also rejected the important work in feminist philosophy of science showing how culture and nature interact in favour of regressive and spurious form of biological essentialism. So, and this is an important bit, 2021, by the way, so they will not be part of the coalition that seeks to fight the anti-gender movement. The anti-gender ideology is one of the dominant strains of fascism in our times. Butler also cited the high rates of physical attacks on trans people. So, like, legendary, as this describes it, feminist, academic, one of the most important thinkers of our time, in the left-wing newspaper, in The Guardian, in the UK, said, you know what? The gender criticals are not going to fight fascism. And that is such a mild claim, because the gender criticals are a key component of supporting and promoting fascism. They are one of the pillars of fascism today in the USA and the UK. But Judith Butler just said, you know what, they're not going to fight fascism. And they made such a fuss that The Guardian just pulled that part of the interview and pretend that it was never said. And then, just 4 years later, here is literally exactly what was predicted. What Judith Butler said. Donald Trump comes out with some anti-science, biological, essentialist bullshit, which is written by an anti-abortionist, and the gender critical movement are like, oh yeah, we love it more. Please, Trump, be more of a misogynist to us. Like, this whole thing is such a fucking joke. And, like, how is this still not just common knowledge? How is the gender critical movement still get away with sneaking under the radar and pretending to be feminist? Yeah, they should be laughed out the room when they try and claim to care about women or be feminists at all. Like, just the most ridiculous clown movement. I know a lot of people in the comments of several of my videos have been saying, why do you call them gender criticals? I call them transphobes. Or they say something way dumber. But I think it's a fair comment to say, why do you call gender critical people what they chose to be called? And it's because of this thing that I was just ranting about. The reason I think you should call them gender critical is because they call themselves that, and they call themselves that to hide who they are. They go into a room full of, a local council or in parliament or Congress or whatever, and they say, we are gender critical feminists and we have concerns about women's rights. We're not anti-LGBT, we just have concerns. And they're, all of the right-wing people who are clued up on all the dog whistles, they know what's going on and they'll support it. But all of these, like, centrists and liberals who don't really know anything about trans rights, they'll be like, oh, well, yeah, I I support women's rights, so we should at least listen to them. Oh, they'll say something in a coded way like, oh, we just think that the Data Protection Act should make sure that it records sex properly, and you'd be like, yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable, and they'll just totally miss what is going on. And that's why we need to call them gender critical, so that people know about them. This is what gender critical is. Donald Trump is a gender critical feminist. Elon Musk is a gender critical feminist. J.K. Rowling is a gender critical feminist. And all of these people are like clearly not feminists, like grim billionaires who hate women, who want to take away their rights, and they also hate trans people. And that's why I think it's important to call them what they are, so that people know when they encounter this term, oh, yeah, gender critical. That's those people who lie about being feminists in order to take away trans people's rights. So I want to go on to the next thing, and this is going to be one of the most horrific things we've ever covered on this show. So I just feel like I need to talk about this. Especially with all of these executive orders coming out in the USA, potentially, putting trans people in a position where just living might be illegal. And considering that they've just, they've tried to enforce this, putting all trans women into men's prisons, knowing that the sexual assault rate is horrific. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to be talking about sexual assault and other things along those lines. Please drop off, skip forwards 15 minutes. Don't watch this video, this part of the video, if you're not ready for that. But this is going to be fucking bleak, by the way. It's going to be very upsetting. But this is the reality of things, and we just need to cover it. We need people to know this, and I want random cis people discovering this video to be like, what the actual fucking shit is this? And to know that this is normal practice. So in the USA, in prisons, where USA has a really bad problem for prison sexual assault and rape, there is something called V-coding. Let's see if we can get this on the screen all at once. So this is from Wikipedia. You can look it up yourself. You can follow the references yourself. I've definitely read about this in multiple places. V-coding is the practice of assigning trans women placed in men's prisons to cells with aggressive cisgender male cellmates as both a reward and a means of placation for said cellmates, so as to maintain social control and, to as one inmate described it, keep the violence rate down. So this is trans women being forced into a men's prison, which is the official US government policy and the policy of lots of the UK and other countries too, forcing them into a men's prison, whether they're a danger to anyone or not. And then the guards, the people in charge of prison placement, selecting to put this trans woman, in a cell specifically with the most violent and aggressive, like rapey cellmates, in order to try and calm them down. So basically, like throwing them a piece of meat or something. This isn't like the prisoners doing it on their own and the prison guards not stepping in to do anything. This is like actively organized by the prison, by the people who are in charge. Trans women used in this manner are often raped daily, and this process has been described as so common that it is effectively a central part of a trans woman's sentence. Just get that into your mind. Raped daily. Like a central part of a trans woman's sentence. It is common for correctional officers to publicly strip search trans women inmates before putting their bodies on display, not only for other correctional officers, but for other prisoners. Trans women in this situation are sometimes made to dance, present, or masturbate at the correctional officer's discretion. And this is so... The reason that I'm not like overwhelmed with... I'm able to read this out is I've encountered this before. And the first time I encountered it, it made me so distressed that it made me like physically ill. These are real people. Trans women, I mean, in 2025, trans women might go to prison for being a teacher. But trans women go to prison for all kinds of things, like being a prostitute in a place where that's illegal, or being accused of deception when someone who knew they were trans had sex with them and then decided they were feeling like embarrassed by it. Or even just for things like stealing. Like if a trans woman shoplifts 3 times in a state with one of these 3 strike laws, then goes to prison and now is by the state punished with rape, like just beyond horrific. A 2021, so this is quite modern. 2021 California study found that nearly 70% of trans women prisoners reported being forced to perform sex acts against their will. Like nearly 3/4, over 2/3. Nearly 60% reported being violently sexually assaulted, and 88% overall reported being made to take part in a marriage-like relationship. 88%. 9 in 10 trans women in prison had to go through some form of this. In California, that's not even going to be the worst state for human rights and prisoners and stuff. Trans women who physically resist the advances of other prisoners, like this is it. The grimness just keeps going. Like it's more disgusting every single sentence you read. Trans women who physically resist the advances of other prisoners are often criminally charged with assault and placed in solitary confinement. The assault charge then being used to extend the woman's prison stay and deny her parole. Like, if this isn't the most like evil thing you've ever read or ever heard of, like it's beyond dehumanization. Like you wouldn't force this on like an animal. You wouldn't. Just utterly horrific. You have to dehumanize someone to the point they're like less than cockroaches in order to think that this is even like acceptable, let alone like people. There are multiple people involved in this. Like when you work at a prison, it requires the whole flipping staff and the people in charge in order to organize this kind of thing. The crime, like the unjust behavior going on here from the people involved in this is worse than any crime that the trans woman's committed. Like the fact that this is some organized like rape factory is beyond like nightmare. It's just so utterly horrific. And I just need people to know that this is the kind of way that trans people are treated in the USA and in other countries. I mean, if you think the USA is the worst place for trans people, you have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, it's just so bewilderingly horrific. And this is before Donald Trump's latest bullshit. And this is when all these, J.K. Rowling types are like, oh, well, we've got to put trans women in men's prisons. But they don't give a fuck about any of this. Totally encourage all of this rubbish. If a trans woman goes to prison for shoplifting, they're happy for this to happen. They would never speak out against something like this, even though they know it's true. People have... Every time a gender critical person talks about prison, someone brings up and points out that trans people are sexually assaulted at horrifically high rates. They don't give a fuck. They do not care at all. They don't think you're human. Yeah, so someone saying they would not only condone this, but they would see it as just and fair. Yeah, honestly, I mean, it's like the story we looked at last week of the trans girl who was stabbed by a gang, and all the gender criticals were saying that she should be tried and sent to prison because she dared to be attractive to some murderous dickhead who filmed her having sex without her consent. Like they genuinely enjoy your suffering, and I think I'm not saying that to alarm you. I'm saying that to get it in your mind that these aren't reasonable people who have been led astray. There absolutely are transphobes who, if they had a few hours talking to a trans person, they would realize that what they believe was kind of rubbish and unfair. Lots of people have like baseline transphobic views because that's just what they've been taught in society. The kind of people doing this stuff and and the gender critical, the main people pushing it and stuff, they do not think you're human at all. They enjoy your suffering. And if you mix up these two groups, you're just going to get, they're going to lie to you. They're going to waste your time. They're going to, you're going to get demoralized from it because you're going to be desperate. Like when you meet, like I've had this situation a few times where I've met someone at the pub and they've said some transphobic thing. And I've talked to them about it for a couple of hours, and then they've like apologized to me, or they've clearly learnt something, or they've been horrified at what they said. And sometimes people just need talking to. And what you do in that situation is you humanize yourself. You're like, mate, you just said this horrible thing, but I'm actually a normal person. Like, here's my hopes and dreams. Let me tell you about my hobby or whatever. And they realize you're a normal person. If you try and humanize yourself to someone who's like ideologically committed to not seeing you as a person, you're going to be like debasing yourself. You're going to be, you're saying, look, I'm a human, please see me as a human. And they're going to be laughing at your suffering. And that is so much more painful that is one of the most painful things. Like I've done this so many times. I've talked to so many gender critical people and tried to humanize myself to them. And if you do it for months at a time with someone who maybe has some ability of like rational introspection and stuff, you can de-radicalize people. I have helped de-radicalize people before, and I know lots of trans people have. But the amount of effort you have to put into that is like a lot. It is months, minimum months of effort every single day talking to someone who doesn't see you as a person. And some of them just aren't going to change their mind. Some of them are going to get worse, and you're going to be out there using all of your energy to humanize yourself and show you, like, please just see me as a person. Please just stop treating me as like subhuman scum. And then when they don't, it's very painful. And so that's why I want you to understand this stuff. Not that, oh, the whole world doesn't see you as human. Not that, oh, you can't live a happy life. Not that, oh, we're doomed. None of that is true at all. I live a happy life knowing that there are some people out there who will not ever see me as human and will enjoy any suffering that I ever have in my life. But that's humans. Like, humans are bleak, and a lot of people are really grim, and you just got to be realistic about it. I have so many amazing people in my life, so many lovely people who love me and who I love, and my life is great because of it. And the fact that there are some people out there who, would enjoy torturing me, I'm not going to let them fill me with despair, fill me with dread, make me upset, make me feel like giving up on people, make me stop loving people. Like, you just can't. You just have to be realistic about it. Like, it's like with the studies on like chimpanzees. My goodness, what is her name? Oh, Jane Goodall. So when Jane Goodall went to go and she was like a famous behaviorologist of primates, and she went to go and live with all these chimpanzees, and she realized how like humans they were, and how loving they can be, and how understanding of each other, and they have all these relationships, and she lived with them, and it was all amazing, and that was like groundbreaking research at the time. But there's this like interview of her talking about how all of a sudden they had like this war, like the group of chimps kind of drifted apart into two groups, and then they just had this war, and they just like tore each other apart, and they were like ripping each other's arms off and enjoying causing pain to each other. And she said it was like so demoralizing to realize that these like lovely animals are capable of such like horrific levels of cruelty. And that's the reality. That's just primates. That's, humans aren't that much different. And some of us are wired in a way where it's very easy for us to enjoy causing cruelty to others, and some people maybe could never do that. Who knows? But at least some of them can, and you cannot let that demoralize you. You just have to be realistic about it, or you will waste your time and energy on someone who enjoys being cruel to you. And lying to you is something they can do to do that. Anyway, that was incredibly heavy. I'm sorry that we talked about that. I don't know if YouTube will even allow this up. I'll try and get an edit of this up as much as I can. We will see. But we definitely need people to know about this stuff. But we're not gonna linger here. We're gonna quickly move on to some really good news, like genuinely amazing news. And then maybe we'll do something. We'll dunk on some idiot. So, oh, and Poppy's here too. Oh no, she just ran off. Okay. So next thing we're going to talk about is some amazing news. Thailand, the country in Southeast Asia, has just legalized gay marriage, which is amazing. I think it's maybe the first country in Asia to do it. Let's see what this article has to say. Does it say if I just search for it? So, it becomes the third country to legalize marriage equality. But that is just incredible. Like, massive congratulations to Thailand and all the gay people in Thailand who are able to get married to the people they love for the first time in the country's history. And like, congratulations to all of the LGBT rights activists who are fighting for this, for so long. And it's just amazing to know that, we look at the US and the UK and we're like, in the English speaking world, we're like, God, is the whole world moving backwards? It's not. Some of the world is still moving forwards, lots of the world, and Thailand is one, and they've just had this amazing breakthrough. Like, it's very easy to think of things in this big scale where, like, Donald Trump is attacking trans rights, this is bad for trans people, but you also have to remember the individuals and the moments of happiness they have. Like, there are attacks on LGBT people across the world all the time. But, like, look at these two guys who just got married. Like, just think how happy they are for being able to, finally be equals in society. And that's just amazing. But not only that, Thailand is on a roll because Thailand passed gay marriage. Incredible. And then, very shortly afterwards, they just made HRT free for trans people. Incredible. So, just days after marriage equality becoming law in Thailand, the country's National Health Ministry added hormone replacement therapy, HRT, to the free health services available to Thai citizens. The ministry allocated a load of money. The targeted funds will cover the HRT needs of 200,000 transgender Thais, the ministry estimated. That is amazing. That is just incredible. How many people's lives are being made better because of political momentum and organizing and activism in that country. So congratulations, Thailand, and all of the people involved in this. Thailand has a population of over 300,000 trans citizens, according to Asian Pacific Transgender Network. The deputy government spokesperson said that the allocation was in direct support of the government's policy on marriage equality, with an emphasis on both physical and mental health for sexually diverse individuals. Incredible. And this is why you'll see, you probably will see more of it, but in the last couple of years, a lot of right-wing people have been saying, like, gay marriage was a Trojan horse for trans rights. And this is one of those cases where we're both looking at the same thing and we're both kind of agreeing, but we're both saying a different view on whether it's good or bad. LGBT people's rights are always tied together because, as we were talking about earlier, patriarchy is a core component of fascism. They need to control women, and in order to do that, they need to make it these categories, male and female, an immutable binary, and with strict rules, and that includes banning trans people and banning gay people from existing. So whenever you get to the point where society is accepting enough to oppose patriarchy and fascism and allow people to be more free, that is always the case where women are going to have more freedoms, gay people will have more freedoms, and trans people have more freedoms. Those things are always going to be tied together, and anyone arguing otherwise is just an idiot. Like, they just are not observing reality. They just believe in ahistorical rubbish. So congratulations, Thailand. I do think I need to caveat that um, Thailand does have increasing trans rights. Even like a decade ago, well, it says here that discrimination against trans people in Thailand has been illegal since 2015. So just over a decade ago, trans rights in Thailand were actually kind of trash. And you still can't update your legal documents to change sex in Thailand. So they still have some way to go. But free healthcare and marriage are such big steps that is amazing. So congratulations, Thailand. I think round of applause for everyone involved in that. I've still got some energy, so let's just see what chat's saying. I know we just dealt with something really horrific and then something really amazing, and I know that's quite like a jarring jump, but I do think it's good to not just do horrible things all the time. And sometimes, I mean, like, what I often do when I watch a horror film on my own is then I watch like a stupid comedy straight afterwards, so I don't feel so grim. And then once I've reset my emotions, I'm more able to think about the darker stuff before. We've got a 4.99 super chat here from Cyruso X Legion. I hope someday, within my lifetime, we are living in a world where all LGBT people can feel safe and respected. I hope so too. Realistically, I don't think that will be in our lifetimes. Not all LGBT people in the world, but hopefully we can drastically improve it for the majority in our lifetimes. I think that's a reasonable goal. Especially seeing as I plan to live to 265, so I've got a long time left. Someone here saying physics abhors a vacuum, nature abhors a binary. Yes, I've been thinking about this over for a while, over time. In quantum physics, there is like what quantum means in quantum physics in the term. It comes from quanta, and it's the observably true idea or reality of the universe that you can't just keep making things smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller in some cases. And an example being units of electrical charge or units of electromagneticness. I've forgotten the word. And that's where you get photons and electrons from. And they always have like discrete amounts, so you can't just like keep halving and halving it. At a certain point you get to a part where you can't make it any smaller. And that's what like quantum physics is about. And you do have like discrete measurements, so like we know hang on, let me look it up. So we know that the charge of an electron, like that's a fixed number. If anyone cares, it's 1.6 times 10 to the minus 19 coulombs. But that's like a discrete measurement. Because I was thinking, is there anything in nature which is discrete? Because when it comes to categorizing stuff, like species or sexes or like types of rock or what counts as a star or all of these other kinds of things, the best we can do are like pretty good strong definitions with pretty good strong edges to them, but they always have fuzzy edges. There's no definitions we can give that are just like truly strict outside of maths. In maths you can say like a square has 4 equal corners and 4 equal edges, and that defines all squares with no exceptions, and nothing else fits into that category. And it's a like 100% precise strict definition with no room for like confusion. But in the real world, like, is that ever true? And I was thinking, well, I guess in quantum physics we know what the charge of an electron is, so that's like a discrete unit. So there must be some discrete things in the universe. But then I don't know. This is way out of my knowledge base. I just watch too much quantum physics videos on YouTube. I'd be really interested if anyone who knows about quantum physics is watching. When we get down to this like level of single photons and single electrons, it might have a discrete charge, but we don't know for sure where it is or where it's been or how much energy it has, etc. So, I mean, is it actually a discrete value, or is it just that, you know, we measure an electron at a certain... We've never measured an electron with a different value, but over time... I don't know. It's confusing, but at least where my current understanding is the universe has some things that are discrete in it, but as soon as you start getting bigger than single, like, elementary particles, then the definitions stop being able to be precise like they are in maths, and they start becoming, well, it's just kind of like that, so it's kind of like that, so these two things are the same. Anyway, talking of definitions, I wanted to have a look at this little video. Now, I seem to be in a role of dunking on videos that are several months old, and this one is 12 months old. But if you're watching and you stumble across some video that came out yesterday or whatever, and you think it would be good for me to dunk on it, send it to me, and then we can dunk on some more relevant videos. But I wanted to dunk on this video, which everyone I'm sure has already dunked on. But the reason I thought this was good is this features Colin Wright, who is one of the gender critical big brain thinkers, one of their best. And I was just kind of watching it to see, and it made me laugh out loud. So I've seen the first half, and let's just see what Colin Wright, gender critical activist, and PragerU, the fake right wing propaganda university, has to say about biological sex. Actually, let's just quickly do a test of volume that I can edit out. What do we think for this level of volume?
To that end, let me rephrase the question to Judge
It's
Jackson.
about the same
Are
volume
six
as
categories
me.
in human?
What do we think? Let's sorry everyone, PragerU. This is more we don't care about PragerU. We're focusing on Colin Wright, who is a gender critical activist. Oh no, I assure you, they're sending their best people. This guy is one of their best people. J.K. Rowling is one of their best people. They might be fucking idiots, but yeah, I thought he might be a bit loud. Let's turn him down. Let's try again.
Humans, male and
How
female.
does this compare?
Real,
I think we
immutable,
sound about the
and
same now.
binary?
What do we think? Yeah, again, I mean, it is a bit of a throwback because it's 1-year-old, and I just wanted to dunk on it because it's a bit funny. We're just doing it, all right? You just gotta like it. And if you don't like it, you can go and watch someone else. It's fine. I'm gonna dunk on this guy because this guy's a fucking idiot. Right, okay. Cover your drinks, ladies. No comment. But let's see what Colin Wright, gender critical activist and thought leader of the movement, has to say about biological sex. We're going to speed up too.
Asked to define the word woman during her Supreme Court confirmation hearings in 2022, Judge Ketanji Jackson famously demurred, saying, "I'm not a biologist." Well, I am a biologist, and I'm here to help.
Oh, he's a biologist. PhD in evolutionary biology. Okay, so not in developmental biology, but okay, that's fine. Let's keep going.
To that end, let me rephrase the question to Judge Jackson. Are sex categories in humans, male and female, real, immutable, and binary, or are they merely social constructs? Answer, real. That's just the way it is, and we all know it.
That's just the way it is. End of conversation. Common sense. Sorted. Nuff said.
Immutable. It can't be changed. And binary. There are only two sexes, not 3 or 4.
Okay, so he's just asserting. It's okay to assert your argument at the start. Let's hear the justifications for these assertions, because that's what's important. Not just whether he's because we already know he's going to make this assertion.
Or 57. This is true throughout the plant and animal kingdoms. An organism's sex is defined by the type of gamete, sperm or ova, it can or would produce.
So, it's defined by the gamete that it can or would produce? What does that mean? How do you know what gametes someone would produce? I've argued with people like this before, and they say, well, if they're male, they would produce sperm, and if they were female, they'd produce ova. And then you're like, well, how do you know if they're male or female if they're not producing any gametes? And they're like, oh, if it weren't for if it weren't for a defect, then they, like, if it weren't for a defect, like if you were to change something, then they'll produce the other one. Like if it weren't for some biological process, then you would have produced sperm. But if it weren't from a different biological process, you would have produced ova. Like it's like the classic, like if I had wheels, I'd be a bike. Like the fact is that, or they would produce? They don't. They wouldn't produce any. That's literally the observable reality of their body. Some people do not have any gametes at all from birth or any point in their life.
Males have the function of producing sperm, or small gametes, and
some don't.
Females, ova, or large ones. There is no third gamete type. There are only two. Therefore, sex is binary.
Obviously, that is false. If there is a property, even if, okay, let's just say gametes are binary. You know, totally happy to concede that. That is a property of people, right? Which gametes you have. And if you have a binary property which applies to an entity, then that always results in a possibility of 4 categories, because there is always one, the other, both, or neither. And he tries to get around the neither category by just saying, oh yeah, but they would be one of the others if something was different. And like, okay, well, if which thing was different? If we change them in this way, they would be in one of the categories, and if we change them in the other way, they'd be in the other category. So that's completely meaningless, but also skips over the both. And in some animals, both is normal. But in some other animals, like humans, both isn't normal. It's very incredibly rare, but it's not unheard of. There are examples of humans who have had both types of gametes at the same time. So even if gametes are binary, that doesn't mean a human sex classification is binary. It means there are 4 groups at minimum, if you only look at one property. Of course, sex isn't just one property, because your sex characteristics include your chromosomes and your hormone levels and your gonads and your genitals. These are like, there's a bunch of other stuff. These are all part of what your sex is. Sorry. So he's saying it.
This shouldn't be controversial. It's just,
it is controversial because it's wrong.
Basic biology.
Basic biology. We said the catchphrase. Basic biology TM. Everyone do a shot.
Every one of us is the result of a male and a female, our biological mom and dad, successfully
I also will point out, just because I'm being picky, but I mean the core issue of what he said so far we've covered. But also he did say throughout the whole of the animal and plant kingdom, but lots of some animals and some plants don't reproduce sexually, and some at some point previously in their evolutionary history reproduce sexually, and now they just don't. For example, there's a type of lizard where they all have ova and there's no sperm involved in anything anywhere, and it's totally fine to say that they're all female, but not that, I mean, humans are the result of this. There isn't any examples of humans there is that one famous one in the Bible which isn't true, but I suspect he thinks it's true. PragerU thinks it's true, but in real life we haven't had any examples of humans that. But just being extra picky here, that it doesn't apply to all plants and animals.
Producing. Sorry to make you think about that. Without the existence of males and
that was a joke. Well done.
Females, I wouldn't be here right now, and neither would you. Our species would have gone extinct long ago.
Well, that's kind of why. I mean, it's not true, is it? Because there are plenty of species that don't have both. So no. Or that they only have things that are simultaneously male and female.
Many gender activists, however, falsely assert that sex cannot be binary and must be viewed as a spectrum because a very small number of people have genitalia that appear ambiguous or mixed.
So I'm not saying the word spectrum because I think spectrum is misleading. I'm saying bimodal distribution. Spectrum, I think, implies a single dimension, like the color spectrum, and it implies like the color spectrum. Red becomes more orange until it becomes orange, and then it becomes more yellow. And so this could be like more red, and this can be more green. And I don't think that's how a good way of representing sex. But anyway, he's now talking about genitals, which is interesting because according to his definition, it doesn't matter what genitals you have. If you're born with ovaries, internal ovaries, and a penis, then you are just a woman, according to him. So he believes some women have penises, of course. I'm sure he would say that and stick to that.
Yeah, that appear ambiguous or mixed, phenomena known as intersex conditions. These ideologies.
Not all it. So there is a form of a subcategory of intersex, which is like ambiguous genitals. But that's not the only type of intersex. There's also like intersex people could be someone who, for example, has no gonads at all, and therefore doesn't fit into either of his sex categories. Oh, what happened there?
The existence of such conditions renders the categories male and female meaningless and must be viewed as a spectrum because a very small number of people have genitalia that appear ambiguous or mixed, phenomena known as intersex conditions. These ideologues claim the existence of such conditions.
Ideologues. You're on PragerU, mate.
Renders the categories male and female meaningless. But intersex conditions don't undermine.
That's not what we're arguing. Well, it's certainly not what I'm arguing or what anyone I've ever met has argued, that male and female is meaningless. That is a false dichotomy.
The sex binary at all, because sex ambiguity is not a third sex. The existence of very rare borderline cases no more raise questions about everyone else's sex than the existence of dawn and dusk cast doubt onto the existence of day and night. Our society.
This is what made me laugh when I was like, I have to do this video. He's just so good at self-owning himself in arguments like this. Oh my God. There's several examples of him doing this. So in this one, he's saying, in the same way intersex people are to male and female, which I am claiming is a binary, as dawn and dusk are to night and day, okay? Do you, Colin Wright, think that day and night is a binary? Like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh yeah, rare, there's a rare one in a million case when it's dawn or dusk, but other than that, it's like day, nighttime, instant change. Like, that's what a binary would be. If it was day or night, it would be day up until the very instant that it was no longer day, and then it would be night. That's the only way day and night could be a binary. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll concede that there's dawn and dusk, so there's these like change states in between, but it's like this is always day, and then there's this dawn bit, and then this is dusk bit, and then there's this this is night, and that's still a binary. It's not a binary. If there's a transition state, then I mean you've just labeled 4 states, so that's a 4-state system, but actually it's not day and then all of a sudden dusk. It's not like this is a good example of a spectrum, day to night, because there's nowhere along the line between day and night where you could objectively declare that it is one or the other. I mean, you could say that the moment the sun goes below the horizon, that it is now nighttime. Or maybe that's when you say it's dusk. I mean, I don't even know. I couldn't even steelman this position. But then, like, if you're at sea level, if you're in a valley, that is still light at that moment. And, how tall is this person? How, like, it just makes no sense at all. Like, you're saying that 2 people who have the same longitude and latitude, if one of them's at the bottom of a skyscraper and one's at the top of the skyscraper, it like day and night is actually different for them, but it's still somehow a binary. Just complete nonsense. It's just so good that he compares this thing that he's trying to claim is a binary to something that is so trivially not a binary. And like I read this article by him where he's like, sex is a bit like flipping a coin. It either lands on heads or tails. Of course, sometimes it does land on the edge, but that doesn't count. I was just like, oh, it's just amazing. Like, why do you keep comparing your thing that you're claiming is binary to stuff that is just like famously not binary? It's just so good.
Society isn't experiencing a sudden dramatic surge in people born with ambiguous genitalia. We're experiencing a dramatic surge in people who are unambiguously one sex, claiming to identify as the opposite sex.
Oh, that's a very good graph there. Very high quality. That's a PragerU classic. I can't say anything about the numbers of intersex people, to be honest. I don't know them off by heart. We are seeing more people coming out as trans, but some people are intersex and trans, and gender critical people always try and say, oh, okay, yeah, cool, maybe you can find some exception. I may have declared that sex is immutable and binary as a core premise to my entire ideology, but you may have found an exception, and I will kind of concede that, but I'll never actually like go back and realize that my core premise is actually wrong. I would never accept that, but I will, just for the sake of this particular argument, back down, because I can't possibly argue against you, and say, yeah, okay, maybe some people don't fit into one of the two categories I've artificially constructed, but that's not trans people, so it doesn't count. You're not allowed to talk about it anymore. Conversation over. But the thing is, if you're saying sex is binary, but actually there's some exceptions, so in society, what do we do with those exceptions? Well, maybe we let them choose, or maybe we just make doctors randomly assign them, or maybe we look at their other sex characteristics and see which ones of them are like on one side or the other, and then, you know, treat them that way until they say otherwise or whatever. All possible options. We'll talk about the morality another time or later, but if you're willing to accept that there's that group, at least some of those will be trans. At least some of the trans people will be in that group. So are you saying that trans people aren't allowed to, describe themselves how best they see? Like, it doesn't matter what sex characteristics a trans person has at all, even if they've changed all of the relevant sex characteristics in their life, unless they were born into sex, and then you could have two people who are like biologically identical but somehow fit in different categories in this system. That's why they don't want you to talk about intersex people, because they do not have answers for this at all. Their ideology just, they don't even have propaganda for this. They don't even have like apologetics for it.
Or something other than male or female altogether. Gender ideology seeks to portray sex as so incomprehensibly complex and multivariable that our traditional practice of classifying people as either male or female is grossly outdated and should be abandoned.
I mean, it is complicated, and there is multiple variables. That is just true.
Evolutionary concept of gender identity.
That doesn't mean that we should get rid of classifying people as male and female. It just means we should stop pretending it's an immutable binary, because it isn't.
System holds that males shouldn't be barred from female sports, women's prisons, or other spaces previously.
We talked about prisons earlier. Yeah, see, the thing is, like, this one I paused on here. So we've actually already talked about prisons in this episode. I'm not going to go back to it. But we have just mention on women's shelters here. The other core part of gender critical ideology. The first bit is sex is an immutable binary. That is observably false. Even when you try and use your crappy analogies to argue otherwise, gender criticals will, under pressure, concede that there are exceptions to their ideology, but then they just quickly hand wave them away, and that you're not allowed to ask questions or think about it. But that's part one of their ideology, and the other part is this immutable binary sex that I've accepted actually doesn't really work. That's what should be used for laws, and that's what should be used for deciding whether a rape victim should be allowed to go to a shelter or not. But actually, even if sex was binary and immutable, which it isn't, you would still need it to be the case that sex, this binary and immutable one, this magic essence that follows you around for your whole life, is the thing that is important when it comes to deciding who needs protection from sexism and sexual harassment and, rape shelters and stuff. And the reality is, which gender criticals will also concede under pressure, but then try and hand wave away, is that at least some trans people pass and are thus treated as the sex they've transitioned to in society, and thus will inevitably experience sexism targeted at the sex that they've transitioned to rather than their birth sex. So neither of the core gender critical claims are true. Neither of them stand up individually, and together they make no sense at all. And they need both things to be true. They need sex to be an immutable binary, and they need it to be the only thing that is used in law and society. And they're both wrong. They're both garbage. And they will individually concede they're both wrong. If you push a gender critical person hard enough, they will be like, oh, okay, yeah, there are exceptions to binary sex, but the exceptions don't count. That is them conceding that their core premise, number one, is false. And then later on, they'll say, oh, yeah, well, of course we should have laws making it illegal for trans people to have sex without telling the other person they're trans. How would that even be possible if it weren't for the fact that society was reading the trans person as the sex they've transitioned to? And if society reads you as the sex you've transitioned to, then you will experience sexism for that sex, and therefore society should protect you against it. And they will concede that because they need to concede that in order to argue for laws like rape by deception or whatever, the things when you kiss someone at the nightclub and then they say that you've sexually assaulted someone. So they even admit that both of their core essential premises are false, but they won't ever allow themselves or anyone to start extrapolating from them admitting those premises are false.
Segregated so long as they identify as female. But intersex and transgender mean entirely different things.
They do, but some people are both.
Intersex people have...
Because these are both like properties of humans, and if we were to just simplify it down and say that being trans or being intersex were both binary things, so you're either trans or cis, or you're either intersex or not, which also isn't true. If that were the case, then there would be multiple categories of people, because when you have binary properties, yeah, on entities like we talked about earlier, you create multiple categories. So if you have trans or not, and you have intersex or not, then the combination of this is trans and intersex, just trans, just intersex, and neither. So then there's 4 different groups, right? So obviously, I mean, that is relevant. It is relevant to point this out, because if gender critical people are like, oh yeah, well, okay, our model doesn't really account for intersex people, and here's the special provision we've made for them, we're saying, so trans people who are intersex, you do accept? And how do you know which one's intersex? Because, I mean, like earlier, Colin Wright was saying that intersex people are born with ambiguous genitals. How do you know how ambiguous my genitals were at birth? Like,
extremely rare condition.
Also, that isn't the only intersex conditions. There are a whole bunch of other ones, and some of them are invisible, and sometimes people don't find out about their intersex condition well into their life, or even until after they die. So
that result in apparent sex ambiguity. Transgender people, however, aren't sexually ambiguous at all, but merely claim...
Well, that's obviously not true, because like a core, well, I mean, sexually ambiguous, I would never use that term, but like, again, this is what I was just saying, one of the things that gender critical people are pushing for is the idea that trans people should have to out themselves in all situations, that their legal documents should have to out them. Why would that be necessary if you always knew who was trans? And so that means there must be people that you claim to believe are male who you read as female, or people who you can't work out which one you're reading them as. That's inevitable reality of the core claims of gender critical ideology.
To identify as something other than their biological sex. Once you're conscious of this distinction, you'll begin to notice that gender activists attempt to steer discussions away from, for example, whether men who identify as women should be allowed to compete in female sports, and toward prominent intersex athletes like South African runner Caster Semenya.
We're not doing any steering here, mate. That is completely nonsense. I will happily argue both in favor of trans girls being allowed to do PE at school, and also that Caster Semenya should not be forced to take hormones against her will, because they're both very easy positions to defend. What the issue is all your insane dickhead leaders like J.K. Rowling will see an intersex person and then start attacking them and calling them a man in the exact same way as when they see a trans person. So we're natural allies because you hate all of us, because your stupid ideology demands that both of our groups don't exist.
Why? Because so long as they've got you on your heels, making difficult judgment calls on individuals.
Yeah, that's why. That's why. Not because it's immoral to attack random cis women athletes just because they're intersex. Yeah. It's to get you on your toes. Oh, so difficult to respond to a transaction. Or they keep asking me questions and I don't know the answers. I just blindly believe what you say, Colin.
Medically complicated intersex conditions. They've succeeded in drawing your attention away from.
You said it weren't complicated earlier. What you on about?
Making easy calls on unquestionably male athletes, like 2022 NCAA Division I women's swimming and diving champion Leah Thomas. They shift the focus to intersex to distract from transgender.
Well, in the last Olympics, I think it was actually J.K. Rowling and the anti-trans hate mob and the entire gender critical movement. I don't know if it was Colin Wright personally or not, but it was the majority of the gender critical movement who were absolutely shifting the gender critical hate canon directly squarely onto two intersex women athletes and trying to ruin their lives because they believe this bullshit about binary sex, and they also believe they can always tell, and they also believe that they know everything about someone's internal and external sex characteristics just from looking at their face.
But the existence of a tiny handful of intersex cases is completely irrelevant to the issue of allowing males in female sports, prisons, and restrooms.
They always have to say tiny handful. They always really have to push it down because they know that it is actually a problem for their ideology. Like, he strongly said at the start, sex is binary, and he's like, oh yeah, but there's some examples, but there's not many. There's not many. Like, even the low estimates of intersex people, like the low estimate the gender criticals push, which is obviously going to be lower than any realistic one, is still like millions of people worldwide. That's a lot of people.
Crafting policy to exclude males who identify as women, or trans women, from female-only spaces isn't complicated. That's because trans women are unambiguously male, and so the chances that a doctor incorrectly recorded their sex at birth...
Unambiguously male, apart from... Wait, what was that we were talking about earlier, where Nancy Mason, Lauren Boebert thought that some random cis woman was a trans woman? Like what happens all the time? Like... just completely ridiculous. There are so many trans people who just move through society without having issues with being misgendered and stuff. And that doesn't devalue the ones that don't do that or choose to not do that or can't do that or for whatever reason. It's just a fact that that is true for some trans people. And so this argument doesn't hold up.
Are essentially zero. Therefore, any transgender policy designed to protect female spaces need only specify that participants must have been recorded female on their original birth certificates. Or, if no birth certificate listing sex is available, biology, not an individual's feelings.
What biology? What we doing? Like the one we just looked at earlier from Trump says what gamete you were set to produce at conception, which isn't even something you can get from conception, but also we're not at conception right now. You can't see what it was at conception. Like, what are you talking about?
Will determine whether the participant would be allowed to compete as a male or female. Crafting effective intersex policies is more complicated, but a much less pressing issue for protecting...
It should be trivial. If sex was binary and immutable, and it was the only thing that we should be using for classifying people, the two gender critical pillars, sex is immutable and binary, and sex is the only thing we should be using for law and society, then it's trivial, right? We just easily classify everyone as male or female, and then we just enforce that on them. All the people that J.K. Rowling has decided is a man, all those black women athletes, they're just all men now. They might have grown up as girls and, you know, experienced misogynistic sexual harassment their entire lives and see themselves as women and be married to people who see them as women and are actually women. But if the gender critical movement has decided that they're men, they are just men now. It's not complicated. Why is that complicated? Why is that complicated? The only way it'd be complicated is either if you're conceding that sex isn't binary and immutable, or if you're conceding that someone's sex isn't the be and end all of which law and society social categories they should be in.
The integrity of women's sports. Individual organizations can decide for themselves which criteria should be used to keep female spaces safe and, in the context of sport, safe and fair. It is imperative, however, that such policies be rooted in properties of the body and not one's identity, because identity is not germane to issues of fairness and safety. You can
That would definitely be a back. If it was actually implemented, it would backfire for gender critical people. It wouldn't. It also wouldn't be ideal for all trans people. But if you were to either say, well, we're trying to stop sexism, or we're trying to categorize people by body parts, either of those two is going to end up including some trans women and excluding some cis women. Like, that's just inevitable. The only way you could ever get what gender criticals wanted is if you had some, I don't care about science, I don't care about biology, I don't care about sexism lunatic in charge, which is exactly what they've got at the moment with Donald Trump. As soon as you start caring about those things, you're going to have to face up to the reality that sex isn't binary and that trans women do experience misogyny.
can identify as anything you like, but your identity does not determine biological reality. And the reality is that sex in humans...
Just like Colin Wright can identify as someone who's got a binary, immutable definition of sex when he hasn't. Yeah, good stuff.
...is immutable, PhD in evolutionary biology and fellow...
I just made the one joke. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Oh dear. I identify as Colin Wright.
...at Manhattan Institute for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU...
Embarrassing. My goodness. Like, this is their best. The best guys go on and say things like, sex is like night and day. And also, yeah, there might be some exceptions, but it's still really easy. But yeah, it might actually be complicated. But it doesn't matter because we should just be doing it based on reality. But not the reality of trans people experiencing the world how they actually experience it. Yeah, just total garbage. How are people falling for this? It's just so garbage. I mean, the reason people are falling for it is because PragerU has more money than you can even imagine, and they are dealing out the propaganda. People encounter more items of anti-trans propaganda than they do trans people, and so people buy into it. I'm going to do a dislike. Oh, I can't because I'm not signed in. All right, get fucked. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you learned something. Sex isn't binary, and if you disagree, if you're a gender critical and you're like, okay, Colin Wright isn't our best, sex is binary, just write it in the comments. Just explain, because there will be gender critical. I'm not gonna delete any of the comments saying this. There will be gender critical people in the comments saying sex is binary and immutable, and then there will be people in the replies saying, okay, then what is it? What is the definition of sex? Can you tell me how to create this binary? And then there'll be this long drawn out thread where they just try and dodge it. They try and avoid giving any concrete definition. And then after days, they'll finally concede that, okay, not everyone fits into one of two categories, but it doesn't matter because trans people aren't intersex. Like, and then in the next video, they'll claim that sex is binary again because they're dishonest and cultists. Goodness. We'll click on that one later. No, yeah. Let me know in the comments what you think. How's everyone in chat doing? I did make the one joke. I'm sorry. I'm going to end the show in a second. Just going to see if anyone has anything to say. Oh, we just got a nice super chat here from Heathen Granny. It's a good name. $5 from Heathen Granny. What race for these gender critical mofos consider me to be? I'm Native American and Southern European in descent and in face. I despise PragerU. Yeah, you probably don't actually want to know their thoughts on race because they're not going to be good. Oh, do we have some gender criticals in chat? That would be exciting. But maybe not. Anyway, I'm not going to wait to see if they're saying anything. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Do a like or something. That would be cool. And thanks again to all of the mods. I really appreciate you. And oh, and here's Poppy just for the ending. Hey, Pops. See you all soon.